Welcome to Catholic Truth Online. As part of this present series, I'm going to read through and explain Chapter 3 of A Catechism of Catholic Doctrine, which I am also calling the Green Catechism. This chapter, Chapter 3, is Creation and the Angels. First question, how did God make the world? God created the world, that is, he made it out of nothing. So he created the world. He made it out of nothing. Now, the power of God is such that, as we said before, it cannot be limited. Therefore, creation is proper only to God, because no creature can produce something literally out of nothing, whereas God does create literally out of nothing simply by willing the thing that is his idea to exist. So he has the idea first, and then we say he has the idea and he acts upon that idea. I mean, there are many ideas, in fact infinite ideas in God, and one of which, or you could say all the ideas that make up this present world, were willed by God, and therefore they came into existence. Therefore things are still coming into existence, such as new human beings, or new animals being born, etc., and so forth. So God created the world, yes, out of simply willing it to exist, out of nothing, out of the divine power which cannot be limited, simply because it is divine, and simply because we cannot put limits on what God is able to achieve. If he were unable to create, he wouldn't be the infinite, he wouldn't be divine. Why did God make the world? God made the world for his own glory and for man's use and benefit. So that's quite a small answer to a big question, as all of these are. Basically they're saying that for his own glory. Now that means there cannot be a greater end than to show forth the glory of God, to show forth, to mirror God in some way, to give praise in a sense to God, to sort of image God, and then it's also for our use and benefit. So really creation was a result of, well, first of all, goodness is diffusive of itself, so God didn't have to, but goodness suggests that there was some inclination in God to create, and he acted freely on that inclination and chose what to create, and thus we have the universe, the world. And it says for his own glory, because he has to produce it for an end, but there's no greater end than God, in a sense, like you and me, you and I are made for God ultimately, because we are made for God in such that our happiness is dependent on union with God, in realizing that we exist through and in God. Okay, so we have this tendency towards happiness and fulfillment, and that is found ultimately in doing God's will and in glorifying God through our existence and our serving of God, doing his will and existing in God. So that kind of says, you know, that it wasn't a selfish thing of God to do. He's done it because he's good, and he's produced all these wonders through that goodness. He wanted them to exist, and so they existed, and he wants us to share in his goodness, in his happiness. What are the chief creatures of God? The chief creatures of God are angels and men. So we have two creatures that are especially characterized by being rational, being able to appreciate good in itself, universal good, as opposed to simply distinct good, or let's say subjective or particular good, such as we perceive merely through our senses. That kind of good, which is always just particular or subjective. The lower forms of life, the animals, they can appreciate that, but they don't have this ability to appreciate the things the way humans do, the way rational creatures do, and they can't therefore love universal good or something as high as their own creator. What are angels? Angels are pure spirits created by God for his glory and for his service. So an angel is basically something that by his nature he's above humans, he's closer to the nature of God, which is a spiritual nature, and he's got no physical matter about him. He doesn't have a body, he doesn't have any physical attributes at all. He merely is a form of his own species. So his basic faculties are his intellect and his will. He has great knowledge, he has great power through having a great nature, and he's able to love the supreme good. So they're pure spirits, and they are of a different nature to us, and they are superior naturally to us. There's a lot of things that they can do, and they know an awful lot more than human beings. What gifts did God give the angels when he created them? When God created the angels, he gave them very great knowledge, power, and grace. So they're saying that they were infused to begin with this great knowledge and with a certain amount of power and with great grace, and grace to fulfill their mission, which was basically to take that step from being in their natural state to entering into the supernatural state in which they enjoyed the beatific vision, in which they were confirmed in grace and were, properly speaking, in heaven. So there was a first natural heaven in which the angels were when they were created, but before they had actually been tested, or during the period of their test. That obviously wasn't the heaven of the vision, or it's called in Latin Caelum Sancti Trinitatis, the heaven of the Trinity, or the heaven of the vision. And so the angels were first of all in this natural heaven, then they were tested, then as we shall see, well, we'll go on to the next question. Did the angels remain faithful to God? Some of the angels remained faithful to God, others through pride rebelled against him. So there we go, and not all of the angels were faithful to God. That's where you get the term angel and demon. So there are angels, we consider those to be the blessed angels, and the demons are the fallen angels. However, they are all categorically under the same name as angels. So there's no such thing as somebody who's a demon from the start, or a being that always was a demon. He became a demon after having rejected grace and rejected the supernatural order, and having decided to remain in the natural order of the angels, and being happy with themselves basically, and not wanting this supreme union with God through the beatific vision, which required his submission to God through some kind of test. And that test, it might be a bit disputed, but I think the popular theory for the test of the angels was that the angels were shown a representation of the Mother of God, of Our Lady, and of Jesus, having been in the state of having taken on manhood. So through the hypostatic union, they saw, oh well, he's going to adopt a nature that's only a human nature, and he's God, and we have to serve him as God and man. And for some of them that was too much for their pride, and they decided, no, that's below us to actually serve a God who actually becomes man, even though he was still equally God within human nature. Even though he assumed human nature, he was still God and man. And therefore they also rejected the fact that they would have to serve Our Lady, the Most Blessed Virgin, the Mother of Christ, as the Queen of the angels and the saints, because if Christ is King, then Our Lady is Queen. So that is one of the popular theories. And then of course Lucifer began saying, I will not serve, and because he is supposed to have been one of the greatest of the angels, that was perhaps a scandal, and many of the other angels decided, well, if he's doing it, then perhaps we should do it too. And that's how you get a great number of the angels. We don't know how many, but according to the Apocalypse, St. John says it was perhaps a third of the angels followed Lucifer and fell from grace. Now, of course, there was another angel that rose up, and his name was Michael, and he went round saying, well, who's like to God? And those who decided that it was better to serve God and to accept the test followed Michael's lead, and that's how we get the war in heaven. It was just basically two angels calling out, this is what I'm doing, and who's with me, kind of thing. And that's how it's generally believed that the war in heaven was fought, and it decided the fate of the angels for good or for worse, for heaven or for hell, forever. How did God reward the angels who remained faithful? God rewarded the angels who remained faithful by giving them the happiness of heaven forever. Those who passed the test were given the beatific vision, and that's where they are ever since. They are in the presence of God, able to see God in the most perfect way possible through the beatific vision. Do the good angels help us? The good angels help us by praying for us and by acting as our guardians. Okay, yes, they intercede, and there are certain angels chosen from what's usually considered to be the lowest of the ranks. There's supposed to be 9 ranks of angels, and the lowest ranks have the most contact with this humble world of ours. The others are doing other things, and they are part of the wider creation, because this world isn't really all that there is to creation. There are spiritual beings out there beyond count, and a lot more than there are men on earth, and there are spirits doing spiritual things and serving God in a spiritual way that we just don't know about, or we don't know very much about at all. So there are, each of us has a guardian angel. So we have a very great spirit who's there, and he's trying to egg us on to do the right thing, and he's protecting us also from physical evils, and he will help us the more if we pray to him the more. He will also enlighten us, protect us from spiritual enemies, and help us on the way to heaven. That's his job. Okay, so it says, has each of us a guardian angel? Each of us has a guardian angel who prays for him, protects him from harm, and helps him to do good, and we've just gone through that already. How did God punish the angels who rebelled? God punished the angels who rebelled by condemning them to the everlasting pains of hell. So quite simply, hell isn't just a big pit of flames where everybody shouts and screams. It's, on a deeper level, it's a spiritual state in which one is constantly opposed to God perversely, and that's why they're unhappy, really, is that they've lost what they were made for. So they suffer the most from the sense of loss rather from the what we call the flames of hell. I mean, it's a spiritual affliction, a spiritual misery, a spiritual torment more than anything else, although there is this fire in hell as well. And if a human goes there, well, it was said that was prepared for the devil and his angels. So it's kind of a spiritual fire in a sense, perhaps as well as a physical fire, but it would perhaps be more significantly a spiritual fire. It's ignited by the wrath of God. So it burns the rebellious creature, but it's also, hell is a place of fixed separation from God. Who is the leader of the bad angels? The leader of the bad angels is called Satan or the devil. Okay, Satan means the enemy, and he was called the devil and Satan after, obviously, he rejected grace. His original name was Lucifer, and that means bearer of light, and because he was one of the angels who was most filled with knowledge and with light, and probably one of the cherubim. Some say he was a seraph, others say he was a cherub. Those are the two top. The seraph is the top choir, and the cherub is the second of the tops of the angels, of the 9 choirs. So it does say that he was a leader, and he was called Satan, and his name was originally, yes, so his name was Lucifer, and it also implies that with great knowledge there can be a temptation to pride, and that's why it also says in the Psalm somewhere that knowledge puffeth up. So sometimes it can be better for our humility not to be given too much knowledge, because then there can be greater temptation to think that we are better than we really are, or have an exaggerated opinion of ourselves. Do the devil and his angels try to harm us? The devil and his angels try to harm us chiefly by tempting us to sin. And that's the thing, is that they can't get back at God, but they're perversely turned against God, and it's really God whom they're against. But they also have an envy for us, and they want to get back at God, so they have a go at human beings by trying to lead us into the same misery that they are in themselves. And the way that you do that is first you go against God by sin, and then you, having rejected him, you end up with the devils. You go to hell. So that concludes that chapter on creation and the angels. Any comments or any questions, leave them below, and always appreciate any feedback on that. And I hope it hasn't been too basic, but it doesn't hurt to brush up. Going through the basics of the faith these days, I think, is a beneficial thing, and it's refreshing for us. I don't think the basics are actually being taught enough these days. So thank you for joining me on this one, and I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.